What's up, everybody? It's a chilly 24 degrees here in Nashville, Tennessee. We've got 6 inches of snow. We typically don't get that stuff. Anyway, you're not worried about that. I'm here to talk about emailing for freight brokers. So, quick background, I come from overseeing two different sales teams in freight brokerage. One of them was able to get up to 45 million in revenue in their third year in operation. Before that, I was at Tesla as a sales advisor, sales manager. And I'm just a sales nerd in general. I read a lot about cold calling, cold emailing. I'm a practitioner. I do this stuff myself and reaching out to freight brokerages, and being the founder for SalesDash CRM, which is one of the only freight broker specific CRMs that's out there on the market. And I want to talk about emailing because I think a lot of people struggle with this. When I'll bring up the templates that are in our CRM, which we don't provide them, but I'll show people how the templates actually work within our CRM for freight brokers. And a lot of people ask about email copy. And this is what I know is that a lot of freight brokers will just be very generic in their approach. And honestly, they need some ideas. So in this video, I'm simply going to talk about some best practices of what I've seen work for some really successful freight brokers that I've coached in the past from teams that I was on. I don't do any consulting. I just like to talk about this stuff openly. If you do have questions, feel free to leave a comment, but I'm just going to talk with you about stuff that I think that you should consider in your sales prospecting emails to shippers. And I honestly do a lot of this practice when I reach out to freight brokerages. So if you work at a freight brokerage, there's a chance that I have cold called or cold emailed. I typically like to call over emailing, but let's talk about the emailing aspect. So let's talk some stats. Number one, read rate is going down year by year, and you have to think about different reasons why this is happening. But there's a lot of new technology with AI. There's tons of email marketing platforms. CRMs have a lot of emailing capabilities, but we may have lost some social skills throughout COVID. That potentially could become a reality, but you got to think it's just easier for people to email. So the reality is that this time has gone down in a 4-year period here from 13 seconds to 9 seconds that the average person's reading an email. So that means you have less time where you have to make an impression, and your subject line and your first line make a huge difference when it comes to that. Other things, this one's a little bit harder potentially to read, but in general, this is talking about reply rates from a percentage standpoint here on this axis compared to the word count of an email. So should you be writing a shorter email or a longer email? And really, this is actually kind of on either one end of the spectrum or the other, but either very short or very long. So really what's being suggested here is that less than 100 words in your email is really what's suggested. And then if you get into the longer aspect, you want it to actually be above 200, but you do want to consider how much text is in your email. And think about this from a shipper's perspective too, right? Is they get a ton of emails from freight brokers every single day. And not only that, they have to run their operations for all the shipments that are going on. They're getting tracking updates and all that kind of stuff. So you got to consider that they honestly probably are not going to actually read a super long email the majority of the time. So just something to think about, that shortening it up could be a big help. These are some awesome stats right here. This all comes from a Zoom Info article on sales, email follow-ups for phones, emails, that stuff. But let's talk about these pretty quick. So 33% of emails will be open just based on the subject line alone. So you should be considering what you're putting in the subject line. Typically, subject lines with more than 3 words can experience a drop in open rate of over than 60%. So 1, 2, 3 word subject lines can be pretty impactful. And it's not to say that it's going to work every single time, but something for you to try. You should be testing all the time when it comes to your emails. Number of touches. High growth organizations report an average of 16 touch points per prospect within a 2 to 4 week span. So how often are you actually reaching out to them? Obviously, the amount of touch points is going to be important. Shouldn't be just thinking about one email. Next one, the optimal number of emails is 5. And then optimal number of call attempts is 6. So skipping down a little bit more here, 50% of sales happen after the 5th follow-up. So you need to be thinking about not just what your first or second email are. How do you get to the 5th email? So you got to have a lot of content. And again, we're going to talk about 5 specific potential ideas that you should can consider. The average sales rep only makes 2 attempts to reach a prospect. So it's good to know that that's what your competition's doing, potentially. And then 44% of salespeople give up after 1 follow-up. So just make sure you're following up. That's going to be a huge key. So I'm going to move into another best practice here, but highly suggest using more language that talks about you and your, so talking to your customer to ask more about them versus just pitching your freight brokerage. The reality is that the shipping manager gets pitched from freight brokerages and freight brokers all day, every day. If I was them, and you should be thinking the same thing, why should they actually care about you? So you should try to get more interested in them. People naturally love talking more about them, but you want to be switching up your language and flipping this to talk more you and your, compared to just more language about yourself. They get it all day. Try to just make that small tweak. It's hard at first, but it's easy to fix. And I pay attention to your opens and your replies when you make this change. The next thing is just to not think about trying to close in the first email and to stop writing novels, because put yourself in their shoes. I'm going to keep saying this, but when you open an email and if it's super long from somebody you don't know and you just see a bunch of I, me, my language, my company does this, we do this, our company does this, it's really easy to just close that email really fast. I get a bunch from lead gen agencies and recruiting services and software development firms all the time. But the goal is not to try to close them in the first email, and nor should you be thinking that. That is a very unrealistic expectation that I think that you should have, because again, there's so many people, so many freight brokers that are emailing, and for those that have been in it for a while, I know that you're used to always hearing, hey, I get 40 plus emails a day, or 20, 30, 40 plus calls a day from freight brokers. So your goal and objective should not be to close in the first email. Really, your goals and objective should be to try to learn about them, learn about the shipper and what they do with their operations, what they're shipping, what equipment types they need, what kind of modes between full truckload, LTL, intermodal, partials, what are they doing? You should be curious about them and what their typical day looks like. What are they, and again, more of their shipping operation. And then the second thing is you should just be thinking that a goal should be to just get engagement. Even if you get a response, a yes or a no, from just like a very basic discovery question, that's a win in my opinion, because they have now acknowledged you, they answered your question, and again, closing over email is wildly challenging. So let's talk about 5 email ideas that I think that you guys can consider when building out your templates. And if you need a CRM to help you manage some of your email outbound strategy, you can use SalesDash. This is a freight-specific CRM. It's free to try for 14 days at sales-crm.com. You can build a bunch of different little email templates with personalization fields like the first name of a contact. It's super nice because it's going to allow you to email a lot faster, and it also tracks email opens. So you can go to click send email, find a template, click that template, and then boom, you can fire this off a lot faster. You can even schedule it out a specific time. So let's talk about the 5 ideas. First one, a product or commodity. Go to their website, look at what they're shipping, talk about those specific ones. So, if it's in the food area, I mean, obviously you can just talk specifically about the food and what they're shipping. If it's manufacturing, you can get really specific on the product, ask about dimensions or, the types of trailers that stuff moves on. Be curious about that kind of stuff. But this is a really good personalization method to try to stick out. Use the product or commodity. Be very specific on what you're trying to ask about what they're moving. Second's going to be a location. This is very easy. Go to their website, take a look at the contact us page, or go to the very bottom, and typically you'll see a bunch of different little locations and facilities like Peoria, Illinois, or Marietta, Georgia, or Smyrna, Tennessee, something of that nature. Be very specific in terms of what the location is and if they're looking to have freight moved out of that location. The third, where are your trucks looking to go? You have a network of trucks if you're already moving freight. Where in the world do they move from? From what city to what city, what state to what state, or what regions do they like to move? Especially in the day and age where fraud and theft are so high and you're trying to find more freight for the carriers that you're already moving with. This is a really good idea to try to be specific with them, even if you're talking about moving to a specific region, because you're going to get the shipping manager to think if they actually do have any freight that goes out to that area. And one of two things are going to happen. They're going to say yes, or 2, they're going to correct you and tell you actually where that freight's moving, and you're a broker, so you should be able to cover that. The fourth is just to introduce a common challenge. So whether you move dry vans or reefers or flatbeds, there's always some common challenges, hopefully, that you are providing, whether that's that may be better pricing, and hopefully it's not always just better pricing, but better service, right? If it's communication, the correct equipment types from coming in, correct pickup details, how the load's being secured, whatever it may be, cross-border, transloading. If there's a common challenge that you find in shipping a specific product or commodity, or even challenges with a region, with capacity, try to introduce that in a question, a very just open-ended, simple question. It could be a 1 to 2 line email max, and try to see if they may have some of those similar situations. Lastly, confirm that they're the decision maker. This is very simple because it's oftentimes just human nature for people to want to actually correct a situation where if you're actually speaking to the right person, or if they can take ownership and say, yep, I'm the decision maker, I handle all that, or they're just going to say, nope, get out of my email inbox, go talk to Jim over in shipping or Susan over in shipping. So now you at least know, and again, you got some engagement. So again, that's going to be one email, especially when we go back to some of those stats of trying to get to at least 5 touch points or 16 touch points. These are 5 simple ideas that you can be considering, and you can expand upon these just from some of the answers that you get. So always worth trying. But other things that are going to be important on top of these 5 ideas are going to be, number 1, to follow up. You have to follow up. It can't, again, just be about the one email. And you need a good system that's going to say, hey, if they don't respond by this day, this is when I want to jump back into that account, and this is when I need to follow up with that shipper again. The second one is going to be to try to be unique. If you're seeing a bunch of templates that are online, and that's the reason why I'm not providing the specific wording in the templates, because if you're sending out the same exact emails, there's no unique differentiator and you're not helping yourself. But you want to try to figure out ways to stick out. Some people use all capital letters, some you all lowercase, some do emojis, some do asterisks or whatever it may be to try to stick out. You want to think of those unique ways in the subject line plus the first line of an email. Because another thing, I'm going to go to the Apple Watch text messages piece here. I like to use the Apple Watch rule, is that if I'm to send the message and if I was to receive it on my Apple Watch, I can't get it into the frame here, but is it going to intrigue me enough to actually go and either open the email on my phone or go see it come through on my phone and then go straight to my desktop? Because a lot of people are scanning the emails on their phone first and then going to their laptop or their computer. So really consider that. Type some out, send them to your personal email, and then really just go from there and see what you can make happen. So with all that, go send emails. There's a lot of lead generation tools out there. I've talked about this in my other videos. Apollo, Seamless, Zoom Info, Lucia. Go get a bunch of different contacts to reach out to. Go use those platforms. Go through a free trial. Get a license to get emails for shipping managers, transportation managers, those people. If you need a CRM, most people are going to start an Excel sheet, but if you need a CRM to help you manage your follow-ups, your notes, your email templates, and all that stuff, SalesDash CRM is your spot. I come from freight brokerage myself, built this system from the ground up. It's only getting better. You can manage shipper relationships. You can manage your carrier relationships. You can capture lanes for both your shippers and your carriers that you're talking to within the CRM. And it's only going to continue to get better week by week, month by month. So go try it out for 14 days free. SalesDashCRM.com. If you have any questions, or even if you have anything that works, leave a comment. Would love to know. Appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck.